Welcome into college football, smothered and covered on a beautiful Tuesday morning here in the South. My name is Barrett Salee. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show. Got a fun, little different show today. We'll talk to Joey Jones, good friend of mine. He is a veteran, former bomb technician, and he has a couple stories that I think are very interesting. He's a diehard Georgia fan. He's been on 2 tours. He is, I think, obviously, if you know him from Fox News, you know about his injuries. And I think it's going to be interesting and something I've always just been curious about, what it's like to be a college football fan overseas in the military, especially one who is from Georgia during a time where, let's be honest, the Mark Richt era was not exactly enjoyable. But Joey, a Georgia guy through and through, we'll talk to him about all sorts of things when it comes to college football and the military and how those two blend together. If you don't know, thank you for checking this show out. This is a revamped version of SEC Smothered and Covered, which was very, very successful between 2016 and 2018. I was forced to give that up. Not very happy about those circumstances, but we brought this show back. It's a national show now. The reception that I've gotten from all you guys has been phenomenal. I really appreciate that. So give us 5 stars, give us 1 star, write a review. I want to know what you like and what you dislike about this show. If you don't like things, let us know. We'll try to fix things. We'll try to tailor it to the college football fan, because college football is one of the most underserved markets in sports media. We're not going to sit here and yell about Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Nobody cares about that. So in the new media, and I'm not talking about just myself, but across the Believe Network, over at Late Kick with Josh Pate, Andy Staples over at On 3, The Solid Verbal, wherever, we're here to provide you college football content 24/7, 365. So check those guys out. You might like what they say sometimes. You might like what I say sometimes. But I think the content is here for you to consume. And certainly we want to be a part of that as well. Hey, you know what? This show is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all summer sports this season, whether it be NASCAR, Major League Baseball, NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, whatever. Get all the latest stats and news from Bet Online. They've got you covered. Get all the latest odds, lines, including team matchups, player props, and odds on just about everything out there. Head to the website today, betonline.ag. Check it out on the web or on your mobile device. Bet Online, where the game starts. Joined now by a good friend. You know him as a Fox News contributor, a guy who I've been friends with for a very long time. He is Joey Jones. Joey, what's going on?
Not much, man. Thanks for inviting me on. Listen, I talk about, politics that can be divided for a living. So thanks for bringing me onto a platform that's way more divided, a sports platform. So it's the pressure's on today.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring you on because you're a Georgia fan. You're from Northwest Georgia, around Dalton. So, and I've known you for you're passionate about Georgia. You're passionate about sports. We've run into each other at Braves games a lot as well. So, and I just like bringing my friends on the show. So that's always good. But first, before we get into the sports angle, people probably know you. They probably know you from your injury and your time at Fox as well. So I guess introduce where you've been, who you are, how you got into the military, and what ultimately happened to you.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the Southeast with Northwest Georgia, a lot of folks know if you go south on Chattanooga, you'll cross a town called Dalton on 75, and it's just like carpet signs. Buy carpet here, buy carpet there. So that was me. I was born and raised in Carpet Town, USA, Dalton, Georgia, and didn't really do much in Atlanta or around Atlanta, but my dad was a diehard Braves fan. He was a bigger Falcons fan probably than I am, and we all understand why that is right now. But my dad was a diehard Braves fan, and he loved football. College football wasn't on his radar as much, so I found my fandom for Georgia on my own in high school. But yeah, I served 8 years in the Marine Corps, and when you join the military, I joined not knowing anything about the Marine Corps. I had no idea. Like, my family were moonshiners. If they did public service of any kind, it was because they got in trouble over the weekend and they were picking up trash. I mean, we just didn't have that. And so when I joined the Marine Corps, I didn't know anything about it. In my 8 years in the Marine Corps, I ended up becoming an EOD tech, or a bomb tech. And on August 6th, 2010, my second deployment, first to Afghanistan, I stepped on a bomb, and it took my legs off above the knee on each side, hurt my arms real bad, and punctured a lung, all those things, and took a while to recover up in DC. And so that's kind of my military background. I parlayed that in a very in a very unique way into a career that touched politics but became media. And so I spent plenty of time in the nonprofit sector. I worked on the administrative side, and then also as kind of a spokesperson, and that's how I honed those skills that parlayed into media. But I've just learned that when I'm passionate about something, I can't ignore it. And if you're going to be passionate about something and you're going to be active in it, say advocating for veterans or hunting and fishing, whatever it is your passions are, it's good to just educate yourself. So I spent 10, 15 years learning. I went on campaign trails and saw how I worked on Capitol Hill and saw how laws are made and culture is reflected in how we govern ourselves. And now, all that's coming to a head because the only kind of bastion I had left in my life that wasn't political in some way was the sports, especially college football. And now we have, potential legislation coming and all these things happening. So it touches everything, man.
There's no doubt, and it is administrative season in our world of college football, which is hard to follow in this day and age. I've always been fascinated by something, and I know other people have. I've actually talked about it with people. In sports, when you're overseas, we see in big games when the national anthem is played, they cut to shots from in Afghanistan when we were there, or Germany, or wherever, where there are army Marines, anywhere, anybody, standing up in front of the American flag, during the national anthem. And I've always thought that was really cool because it shows to me that you guys are human, right? Like you actually have passions outside of what you're doing. So, what is it like being a sports fan overseas, especially a college football fan? Because, to me, I would guess there are a lot of college football fans overseas. But what's it like being a sports fan and using that as sort of an escape?
Yeah, the best. I'll start with an analogy because I talk in riddles, I guess. But when I grew up in the first 18 years of my life here in Georgia, I didn't listen to a lot of country music because I lived that every day. So it wasn't. There was no like nostalgia, no missing home there. As soon as I joined the Marine Corps, I went to Japan, Hawaii, California, and I listened to country music all the time. So your college football fandom is amplified the same way. I mean, in the South, we're kind of we're simple, right? It's like the University of Georgia, the University of Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, you've got Auburn and Vanderbilt, but for the most part, you've got the name of the state right there in the college. And so it becomes a part of your identity. When you're in a platoon of 30 guys and gals, or for me, guys, wherever you're from is a part of your identity. You can bet the two guys from Boston, Tachi and Andresi, the Italian and the Irishman, you can bet being a Red Sox and a Pats fan was huge. Well, it's the same thing for the guys from the SEC. Like I'm the Georgia guy in the platoon. I'm a Georgia fan. It's a part of my identity. So it's amplified on the college football stage. And I think that's why, like, I can tell you, you go to a Marine Corps base in California and you're going to see as many Georgia tags on the front of somebody's truck as you will, going down to Atlanta. And it's because when you're away from home, you miss it and you want people to know who you are and where you're from. I will say, like, I went to Iraq in 2007 and 8, and we had access to TV and the internet pretty readily available there. I went to Afghanistan in 2010, and it was much different. So my 2007-8 deployment, that's when the Bulldogs rushed the end zone at Florida. That's when Georgia had a couple of big games, but then kind of fell short there. And just overall, my time in the Marine Corps was when Mark Rick was coach, so we knew we could win 10 or 11 games, just not the big ones.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me that you have college football. Like when you were over there, did you find yourself maybe learning about other sports? People from, like you said, Boston who are Red Sox fan or hockey fans. Do you ever find yourself just kind of sitting around and listening to other people's stories and saying, "Wow, you have the same passion that I do, just in a world that is completely separate from my Southern roots"?
I'll tell you this, college football is king no matter what the group setting is. So there were fans of other schools, but they eventually had to pick up a Georgia or an Alabama or an SC or a Texas at that time because that really was the big conversation. I did when I was in DC after I was injured. I went to some Capitals games and absolutely loved it. So I've got an affection for hockey, but because we don't grow up playing it, the context isn't there. So the passion it's hard to create passion. It's just there. Like, for example, I went to the Falcons Super Bowl in Houston, and ever since then I've been heartbroken. But if they had a good season, I'd be just as passionate again. And so, you're kind of born with it. And I think like in the South specifically, there is a huge emphasis on state pride. Like I'm from Georgia. And so in the Northeast, I think it's a little bit different. I mean, you got the New England Patriots, and then you go to New York, and there's like four teams, between the baseball and NFL. And so it's almost, that state pride of that's who I am. I'm one of those people. We have a culture. I mean, everybody's chasing Texas on that because it is so unique. But I think in the Southeast, especially, college football rises to the top for that reason. After that, I'd say the MLB is probably a big deal. I mean, NFL fans to me are more regional. It's Northeast and Midwest.
Yeah.
And college football is kind of everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I didn't know you went to the Super Bowl. I had some friends some other friends that went too. What was that like? Like, what was that? What was the end of that game like in person?
You know what was crazy is I went with Nate Boyer, who, for those of you that don't know, he played as a long snapper and like a third string DB for the University of Texas for 4 years. But what they don't, what some people may not know is he did it as a 30-year-old Army veteran. And so he walked on, Mac Brown gave him a spot, and he earned a starting role. And so Nate's got this really cool story. He went up and did preseason with the Seattle Seahawks, actually. So he's got a little bit of NFL experience. And we went there together. We were doing stuff, and people. When you go to the Super Bowl, there's this whole circus the week before of media and events. And so we ended up with 2 seats, and we're sitting there, and he's cheering for the Falcons because he doesn't have a reason not to, and he knows I am. At halftime, 28-3. So what do? I get up and I go buy a T-shirt for every member of my family. I probably spent $300 on T-shirts.
Oh, no.
It takes a while to get back to my seat. I've got a big gulp Pepsi with the logo on it for each of us. By the time I get back to Nate and hand him his drink, I think the game we're up by 7 or the game is tied. It's right about the point of that crazy catch between the legs. And so I'm like, what in the world just happened? Like I wanted to just leave those T-shirts sitting there. Like I wasn't heartbroken. My jaw was on the floor. It's like, how did this even happen? Because I didn't see the third quarter. And but I'll tell you, walking out, I think the Patriots fans are just so used to winning. They weren't even obnoxious. Like I went to the Georgia Texas Sugar Bowl, and after the game, the Texas fans were just outright mean. But after the Super Bowl there with the Falcons, like they didn't. The Patriots fans were like, good try, good job, little buddy. That's all.
Pat you on the head, move on.
Yeah. But
that's wild.
I
was not there. I remember just when the coin toss happened, I was just kind of huddled in the fetal position in the corner going, exactly what's going to happen right now. That was a bad night. So you do work at Fox News and you are up in New York a lot. But you have people from all around in the media business. I know there are some Georgia fans up there. I think Mary Catherine Ham's a big one, but what's it like sort of being passionate about college football, sort of in a business environment that probably is not necessarily accustomed to your kind of passion in the college world?
It's not as fun as it was in the Marine Corps. I'll tell you that. In the Marine Corps, like every day my friendship was challenged with the Alabama fan, but up there they're Northeast. So I've got one coworker, Todd Pyro, big New York sports fan. So I think he's Giants, and I can't remember if he's Mets or Yankees, maybe both. And so he'll want to talk sports, but when it comes to college football, he just knows kind of those top end headlines because he's not watching. It's really crazy. So the media school at Georgia, I can't think of the name of it right now. It's a pretty good school. So we have, I think, 3 producers on our morning show that are University of Georgia grads, 2, if not 3. And so it's cool when we are doing well, I wear my Georgia lapel pin. There's a little Power G right here. And when I'm hosting on Saturdays and Georgia's going to play, and I'll end the show and I'll kind of yell out "Go Dogs" as the show's fading away. And little things, you can't do it too much or you're gonna, it's gonna be too much. It's a news show, but I make sure that people know that I'm a Bulldogs fan, and it's fun once the season gets going because then I've got producers coming in. We've got a guy, Mark Meredith, that covers the White House. He went to Georgia, and so we actually have a pretty good representation up there, the state of Georgia and then the University of Georgia as well. one of my co-hosts I work with most is a guy named Will Kane. A lot of sports fans know him. He was with ESPN for a long time. He's a big Texas fan. So last year was difficult for me because I've had the Braves over him, I've had UGA over him, and then last year you have an All Texas World Series, and you have the University of Texas essentially winning the SEC by beating Alabama, and Alabama beating Georgia. So
Yeah, I've actually been on Will Kane's show, and we talked a lot about Texas. I guess what's the conversation with him like? Because Texas is moving into the SEC. Do y'all get into it a little bit?
He's a nice guy. So he doesn't talk smack. He's kind of like almost fake humble right up until Texas is really making it happen. And then it's more of a I told you so. So I hate those kind because I just want to bring the firepower. I want to tell you all the
Right.
reasons Texas sucks. And he won't do that about Georgia. He just kind of lets the game decide.
So back-to-back national championships. We'll move on the field right now. Back-to-back national championships. Just for you, being a Dalton guy, kind of going through what you've been through and sort of spreading that love for Georgia around through your platoon and through everybody else in the military. What was that like with back-to-back national championships in your world?
Man, that first one was just insane. And I think what I've learned, and to the Alabama fan base, they're going to roll their eyes at this because they've known it for a long time, or maybe they don't feel that way at all. That first one was so special. I don't think I appreciated the second one at all. Like, I think it was like I don't even want to say it was expected. It just, I mean, we were still riding high on the first one in 40 years. And so it was one of those things where it's like, well, how do you celebrate two in a row with Stetson Bennett, a homegrown guy, and then it becomes, well, does that mean anything less than a national championship is disappointing? I mean, winning the Sugar Bowl is kind of a big deal. Winning the Orange Bowl is kind of a big deal, and so it's been fun to have that problem, though. It's been fun to have a problem to where college football is as difficult and competitive as ever to win in. And we want to know if not winning the national championship should be a disappointment or not.
Well, this year you're going to find out, I think, because the expectations are super high. When you look at Georgia going into this year, is it national championship or bust in your mind?
No, it can't be. It's a 12-team playoff, and a lot of people look at that and say, well, that means there's more opportunities to get in. There's also that many more games to get kicked out and to have a bad game. If you go back and watch the Georgia Alabama SEC championship last year, Georgia was not the team that had been the two previous years, but they also were pretty beat up. I mean, Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey both were pretty beat up, and then we had our offensive lineman was out. I'm losing his name right now. So that game was really close with Alabama. I think throughout the season, Georgia was a better team. But then you go back and look at the 2 years where they won the national championship, and you see games where just everything fell Georgia's way. And you take a step back and go, hey, that's football. So if it kind of averages out that way, 12-team playoff, any team can catch fire and any team can be beat up. That I actually would prefer it stay a 4-team or 2-team championship because – last year, if you had a 2-team championship, who do you put in? Maybe Florida State gets more consideration for being completely undefeated in a 2-team model. Maybe they just take all the drama out. I'm not sure, but I like it. I mean, at 2 teams, if my team's 3rd or 4th, I can complain, but I also get to go enjoy a bowl game. At 12 teams, those New Year's Six games, I don't know how they're going to be important. I don't know how you keep a trophy case for a winning a round of 12 or a round of 8 game. To me, it's scary. I'm not going to talk it down, but it's scary for me, even as a guy who has a team that hopefully is on top.
And this is why we're friends, because we are in agreement about the postseason. You are not part of the postseason expansionist complex. It's everyone's pushing it that direction. Minimalism is good. All right, you can't say you don't know, because now the city and state of Georgia, we used to be Losersville. Now we have championships. We have the Braves World Series. Georgia has 2 national championships. You have to pick one in 2024/2025, because that's when Georgia would play in the national championship. Braves World Series or Georgia national championship?
The one I want or the one I think will happen? The one I want would probably be the Georgia national championship. The Georgia national championship, just because Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC. Alabama fans finally having a chance to go into Tuscaloosa favored. I want Georgia to meet all those expectations. My fear with the Braves is they've started out too strong, and that's never good for the Braves fandom to start out strong like that.
Yeah, I think the Braves will get it done though. The bats need to get going though. As a guy who hosts the Braves report on AJC, last week has been a little depressing on the show, but hopefully that'll change. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on, giving a little different sports perspective, a different college football perspective, because we can sit here and make lists all day long in the off season. Who are the best quarterbacks? I tried to do something different, and I appreciate you hopping on because I do think your story is interesting. And honestly, just being a sports fan in the military to me is something that I've always been curious about. So, Joey, appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
That will do it for this edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Really appreciate Joey Jones talking a little bbit about sports in the military, specifically college football in the military. Go give him a follow on Twitter /X/Johnny_Joey. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show as well. Please give it a 5-star. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you want to give it a 1-star, fine too. Leave a review. Tell us what you like, what you don't like about this show. We are all about constructive criticism here at College Football Smothered and Covered. Until next time, appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.